Hello, I am Sarah. I'm currently 40 years old, but if someone were to guess my age just by looking at my face, they would probably say I am at least 20 years older. You're probably wondering why I want to tell you exactly what happened to me. In most stories you have heard, people usually blame someone or something for their misfortune, or at least have an explanation for why things went wrong. But in my case, I was the one who caused myself to age far earlier than normal. I used to be one of those girls who was full of joy and energy. I couldn't stop laughing, and if I said we weren't financially well off, I would be lying. When I was single, my father held one of the highest positions in the army. After I got married, my husband was a wealthy businessman. So now you're probably asking, what went wrong? Why did I become so old and broken? I will tell you myself. The reason I ended up like this was one thing. I loved going to fortune tellers. I was kind of addicted to it. I loved hearing about things that hadn't happened yet. I didn't even have a real reason to seek out future. Thank God I didn't have a missing loved one. No one had disappeared or was in prison. I just enjoyed it. I loved visiting those people we called fortune tellers or seers. Honestly, I never really understood why I was so drawn to them. At first, I would go for small things, like before I got married, I went to find out if I would have a good life with the man who had proposed to me. I wanted to know if our stars aligned and if we would be compatible. In the beginning, I would go with my mother. On her side of the family, we were a bit superstitious and believed in certain old beliefs. I'm sure you have heard of fortune telling. Some of them tell you things that actually happen, and others just feed you nonsense. I want to tell you about what happened to me, and I take full responsibility for it. As I said, I was familiar with these things from a young age. After I got married, I started visiting a fortune teller my mother knew. Sometimes I doubted my husband, so I would go to get reassurance. Other times, I went just for fun. Through these visits, I got to know this woman. She was around 70 years old, or so she claimed. I became fascinated with fortune telling myself. I told her, her name was Jane, that I wanted to learn to read fortunes like her and become a master at it. Back then, she was well known among those who believed in such things. She could read any kind of fortune you could imagine: coffee horoscopes, tarots, cards, chickpeas, salt, wood, pepper horoscopes. Believe it or not, back then around 10 people would help set up whatever kind of fortune the customer wanted. At that time, Jane was considered a true master of fortune telling. Honestly, most of what she told me during reading turned out to be true. Not always in exact detail, but the core of it was spot on. When I asked her to teach me how to read fortunes, she told me something I will never forget. If you had come to me 10 years ago and asked to learn, I would have said, Do you think fortune telling is child's play, that I would just teach it to you? But now, even though I have realized too late and can't walk away from this path, I will tell you the price you will pay to learn this isn't worth it. Learning fortune telling isn't worth the cost. Dear girl, you are not just any customer. I know your whole family, but I paid a heavy price to learn each of these methods. At first, I thought she meant she paid a lot of money to a teacher, but when I said it's not about the money, she frowned and said, I learned fortune telling from my mother. I was so shocked I couldn't say another word or ask anything else. About 2 years after I expressed my desire to learn, she passed away. She had never married or had a family, and after her death, all her belongings went to the government. She truly was a gifted fortune teller. That's why she said she paid a heavy price. I only understood what she meant after she died. After her passing, everyone who claimed to be a fortune teller turned out to be a fraud. Their words had nothing to do with me, just nonsense from their own twisted minds. Friends kept recommending people, saying, this one's really good, but every time I went, I realized they were just another fake. Then someone introduced me to a man from a southern city. He was called as a herb burner, a kind of mystic. In some cities, they call them Jabu. I called him, and he burned some herbs for me. He seemed to know more than the others. He told me, don't go looking for a true master. They will find you. A few months later, while shopping in our town's market, I passed through the herbalist section. I stopped at a random shop to buy a few things. My eldest son was in high school at the time. As I was shopping, an old woman approached me and asked, do you know me? Her face was covered in tiny tattoos, the kind women used to get back then. I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. She showed me my purchases and said, I will wait for you over there. I didn't really want to talk to her, but out of politeness, I went over after I finished shopping. She asked, you're Sarah, right? I said, yes. How do you know me? She replied, I saw you a few times when you visited Jane. I have a strong memory. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember her. She said, I want to give you an address. If you ever want a reading, go there. I was happy and asked, is she as good as the late Jane? She smiled and said, this one, compared to Jane, not even close. Then she gave me the address and left without saying much more. After 2 days, I couldn't resist the urge to go back to that address and see if what that woman had said was true. When I arrived, I saw a small, worn-out door. I rang the bell, and to my surprise, the same woman opened it and invited me in. The house was tiny, just 2 rooms and a small courtyard. It looked shabby. She led me into one of the rooms, where I saw a very thin, frail old man with extremely dark skin. She said, Daniel, you have a visitor. I was startled. Who was this woman? Why didn't I remember her? Why was the place so eerily quiet? She reassured me, saying Daniel only accepted special clients. Don't be afraid, she said. Sit in front of him. The old man slowly turned toward me with great effort. Then, to my astonishment, he lifted a black cloth off something that looked like a tray. Underneath was a layer of black dust or soil. When he tried to speak, his chin trembled so much He could barely form words. He asked for my mother's name and told me to press my index finger into the tray. I did as he said. I had never been asked for my mother's name during a fortune reading before. As I lifted my finger, a small hole had formed in the black dust. The woman laughed and said, "Now this is fortune telling, not the nonsense you have seen before." The old man leaned in, whispered something into the tray, and blew over it. Then he placed his hand on the dust. After a few seconds, he lifted it and told me to look closely. To my shock, it looked like someone was drawing shapes in the dust around the hole I had made. A terrible smell filled the room, and my back felt like it was on fire. The old man studied the shapes and began speaking with difficulty. He told me things about my life, things no one could have known, from childhood to adulthood. Then he said, "Tomorrow your son will face a problem. It's not serious, but tell him to stay away from his friend. He will cause trouble." I was stunned. I'd never experienced anything like it. The woman told me, "Go. If what Daniel said comes true, come back and pay." And sure enough, when my son came home the next day, he had a cut above his eyebrow, just like the old man had predicted. From that moment, I was completely devoted. But let me tell you, that woman was cruel and served the devil. She only called the old man sage to gain people's trust. He was no real sage, just a vile, pitiful man. The next day I returned. The woman opened the door with a smile, as if she'd been expecting me. I sat down and started talking to her. The old man was still incredibly weak. I asked how much I owed. The woman jumped in, named a price, and took the money. I asked her, "What are you to Daniel?" She said she was his wife. Honestly, the man looked 3 times older than my father. I asked why she married someone so much older. I thought he was her father. She claimed they weren't that far apart in age. It just seemed that way because of his work. I didn't believe her. I figured she had no choice but to marry an old man. I visited a couple more times. Each time the old man read my fortune the same way. I was mesmerized, especially by the part where shapes appears in the dust. I even brought my mother once or twice, but they insisted I come alone. They say Daniel didn't have the energy to read for others. Strangely, I never saw anyone else there for a reading, but his predictions were incredible. Still, I didn't understand what they meant when they said he was broken. Even Jane once said he had paid a price. One day, the woman sat at my feet and said, "If Daniel dies, no one will ever match him in fortune telling." Her words drilled into my mind. I asked if he had any students. She said no. Then suddenly she added, "But if I can convince him to teach you, will you give me a nice reward?" I said, "Of course. I would pay her well." That wicked woman took a lot of money from me for something worthless, just to make it seem more valuable and keep me from getting suspicious. But the truth was, they had brought me there to train me. Their spirits, those bound to their spells, had chosen me. Contrary to what most people think, real fortune tellers have dark entities helping them. At least the truly powerful ones do. You know, many people call themselves fortune tellers, but now I realize that old man wasn't a fortune teller at all. He was a seer, and back then I didn't know the difference. Those familiar with these dark arts understand that true prophecy involves powerful spells, ones that summon a specific spirit to enter someone's life and report back. Sometimes the spirit doesn't just observe, it shapes the future itself, creating events that the seer then predicts. For example, they might say something bad will happen to you in a few days without specifying what. Then the spirit causes a financial loss or misfortune. Or they might say something good is coming, and the spirit arranges for unexpected money to appear. It's all designed to make the client believe and become devoted to the sorcerer. That's enough background for you to understand what happened to me. I had no idea that fortune tellers and seers used spirits, but I agreed to learn. Believe it or not, it only took 3 days for them to train me. They said I was the perfect candidate physically and spiritually for this work. Apparently, I had been chosen by the spirits themselves, though I didn't understand what that meant. They gave me a book filled with strange old drawings and explained what each symbol meant. I had to memorize them and learn to recognize which one appeared in the black dust after someone pressed their finger into it. I'm sorry, I can't tell you what that dust was made of, but I will say this: it was far from anything human or natural. One day they taught me how to make it. It looked like soil, but there wasn't a single grain of earth in it. On the final day, they told me, when you are reading someone's fortune, don't be afraid of what you see around you. Trust the voices you hear. Then they gave me a written spell to recite every night for 10 days and place under my pillow. Later, I realized that this was a contract, my permission for the spirit to enter my life and reveal itself to me. After 10 days, I returned. The old man smiled weakly and said, "My mission is complete now. I hope you succeed in this work." Then he told me to begin immediately. "You must read for at least 15 clients a day," he said. "If you don't, you will suffer at night." I didn't understand what he meant. That day, I read fortunes for a few relatives. I didn't see anything. I just felt something while doing it. That night, I swear, it felt like someone wiped my back over and over. The next day, I read for 3 people. That night, it felt like I was being strangled in my sleep. I went back to the seer and told him I only wanted to learn. I didn't want to actually read for people. The woman snapped, "You think it's your choice? If you don't read, the spirit will kill you in your sleep." One night, I dreamed of a creature with its face covered. It said, "You are one of my children. If you don't obey me, I will show no mercy." I was so terrified by its voice and presence that I wet myself in my sleep. I started calling everyone I knew, begging them to let me read for them. If fewer than 15 people came to me in a day, I would suffer all night, my body covered in bruises and wounds by morning. You might think that's not so bad, but the more I obeyed, the stronger the spirit became. After just 2 months, I looked 10 years older, and during readings, I could see that hideous creature clearly. It would draw symbols in the dust and whisper their meanings to me. The more I worked, the more cursed my life became. The spirit's presence grew stronger. If I skipped a day, it wouldn't punish me, it would go after my family. One day, a wise elder told me the only way out is death. That tribe doesn't play games. My husband died suddenly of cancer. At his grave, I saw the creature laughing, saying, "This is the price you pay for working with me." My children began to hate me for no reason. The spirit wanted me isolated, alone. So I distanced myself from my loved ones to protect them. Now I am Sarah, the most sought after seer in the country. People travel from all over to see me or call for readings, but I am the loneliest woman in the world, forced to keep reading so the spirit won't harm my family. The spirit that helps me and enslaved me is named Shaman, which in its word means boundless darkness. I hope no one ever suffers the fate I did. If I were to describe it to you, it's a tall, hunched man. Every time I see him, it's like he drains a year of my life in an hour, and every word he speaks sends tremors through my body. This is the price I paid for prophecy.